My name is Michael. I'm 36 years old and I live with my wife, Emily, in a quiet little apartment on the outskirts of Manchester. We chose a life with no kids, no noise, and no complications. Some people say my choice is selfish, but after growing up in a family where loudness only brought tension, I call it peace. My family, including my mom, dad, 2 older sisters, and a bunch of nieces and nephews, has always been a chaotic mess. My oldest sister, Sophia, 42, is full of big ideas, but rarely follows through on anything. The second, Rebecca, 39, is constantly overwhelmed with 3 kids and a husband who prefers partying over parenting. I'm not close to them, but my mother, an emotional woman, always tries to pull me back into the family whirlwind with lines like, "Everyone has to be there, at least for the holidays." This time, it was a summer barbecue my parents were hosting on a Saturday afternoon. I originally planned to skip it, like usual, but Mom called me at 7 a.m., her voice a mix of excitement and pressure. "You can't miss it. Everyone's going to be there. It'll feel lonely without you. You're part of this family, Michael." I sighed. Emily looked up from the breakfast table, hand resting on her coffee mug, and gave a subtle shrug that meant she'd go if I wanted. In the end, not wanting to disappoint Mom again, we decided to show up. Just for a while. When we arrived, I immediately wanted to turn the car around. My parents' backyard was packed, over 20 people, adults and kids alike. The air was thick with beer and barbecue smoke in the sweltering July heat. Sophia and Rebecca were already there, each holding a margarita and laughing at something not particularly funny. The kids were screaming, running around the tables and tossing food across the lawn. "Oh, finally," Sophia called out, wobbling over. "Michael, I thought you were too busy running the world. Got a CEO meeting or something?" She winked meaningfully, and I clenched my fists just to stay calm. I forced a smile and pulled Emily toward my dad, who was sitting quietly in a small hot tub out back, like he was trying to hide from the world. "You made it," he said simply, handing me a cold bottle of water from the cooler next to him. We tried to be polite, chatting with a few familiar neighbors, but the vibe was anything but pleasant. The fragmented conversations, the glances at my watch, the loaded questions about when are you having kids from extended relatives. It all felt more like a trial than a party. Things started spiraling when the 3 nieces and nephews, 2 boys and a girl around 7 to 10 years old, suddenly charged toward a guest standing near the edge of the pool. Everything slowed down. The oldest shouted, "1, 2, 3. Push," and they lunged forward. The woman stumbled but managed to grab the railing, only getting half soaked, but the look on her face was far from fine. She dried herself off silently and left, leaving behind an awkward silence. Before I could react, the kids ran at me next, their new target. I caught the movement from the corner of my eye and stepped aside, letting them tumble right into the pool. Emily burst out laughing at their spectacular slip, and a few others chuckled too, until Sophia shrieked, "Michael, why didn't you catch them? They could have drowned." I froze. No one thanked me for avoiding a bigger accident. No one asked why the kids were running wild, unsupervised. All I got were blame-filled words and teary, tipsy glares, as if I had pushed their children in. And that was just the beginning of the afternoon I wished I'd never shown up for. I drove home, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. Emily sat beside me, silent the whole way. She didn't need to say anything. I knew she was drained too. That family fun my mother always described had never truly existed. It was just a polished shell covering judgment, jealousy, and blame. Ever since I graduated with my MBA and landed a job at a top finance firm in Manchester, my life took a different turn. I bought my first apartment at 29. 3 years later, I met Emily, a skilled, steady chemical engineer who supported every choice I made. We didn't rush to marry, didn't have kids, and kept our personal plans private from my family. That was the only way to maintain peace. Still, silence didn't stop the prying eyes. Sophia and Rebecca, both full-time moms, didn't like to admit it, but they always gave off a vibe whenever I mentioned work trips abroad or when Emily and I posted photos from Italy, Iceland, or Portugal. They'd throw in half-joking comments like, "Must be nice not to worry about diapers," or "Only people without kids get to live like that." I'd smile, but never truly laugh. There was bitterness in those words, like I had something they once dreamed of, but couldn't hold on to. 2 years ago, after a weekend getaway in Snowdonia, I bought a small mountain cabin. Nestled in a pine forest with a snowy view of the mountains, it became my perfect escape. But I knew if I registered it under my name, the family would flip, especially Sophia. So, I had my parents hold the title as an early retirement gift, even though I paid for everything: the purchase, the taxes, the upkeep. At first, the plan worked fine. My parents were discreet and only visited occasionally. But then, one day, I came across a stranger's social media post. A photo of my cabin with the hashtag #sign Airbnb retreat and the caption, "Hidden Gem in Snowdonia, hosted by Sophia, highly recommend." I had to read it 3 times. Not only were they using the cabin I funded, but they were renting it out for profit? I didn't react right away. I needed to be sure. Over the next few weeks, I monitored posts, Airbnb reviews, and even had a friend book a weekend stay. Sure enough, it was listed under Sophia's name, with over 20 reviews and rates from £350.0 to £500.0 a night, depending on the season. I was stunned. At just 2 weekends a month, Sophia could be pocketing at least £3,000, 0 pence, from a place she didn't pay a dime for. Rebecca wasn't innocent either. Another time, Emily and I dropped by unannounced to check the heating system before winter and found a strange family grilling on the porch. One man casually said, "Oh, Rebecca told us to come today. Her family's joining us later." I didn't say anything, just politely left a message with Mom, but I understood then. They thought that because it was under my parents' names, they could treat the house like their own. Worse, they'd secretly turned it into a moneymaker. I used to think staying quiet would keep the peace. But when silence becomes a shield for greed and disrespect, patience stops being kindness. It becomes a trap. For me. So, I started planning. No more letting others decide for me. No more mistaking my silence for consent. Just 3 days after the barbecue, my phone blew up with sarcastic texts, criticism, and downright ridiculous anger. First, from Sophia. "You're so selfish. Not wanting kids is your choice, but that doesn't mean you get to stand apart from the family." Then, from Rebecca. "We're working so hard raising our kids while you just enjoy life. That cabin should have been a family place, not your private asset." Before I could even reply, both brothers-in-law chimed in. One, James, Sophia's husband, even sent a half-joking, half-threatening text. "If I'd known you'd pull this stunt, I wouldn't have left that gate unlocked." I wasn't sure if it was a threat or a slip, but it was enough. I blocked them all. Emily didn't say much, just squeezed my shoulder and turned on Do Not Disturb on my phone with her own hand. I thought that would be the end of it. But Thursday afternoon, Mom called, her voice unusually tense. "Michael, we want to have a family meeting. No kids. Tomorrow 6 p.m. Please don't say no." I wanted to refuse, but I said yes. For Mom, and for myself. I needed to face this, one last time. The meeting was in my parents' living room, once filled with cheerful family photos, now the backdrop for a confrontation we all knew was coming. Sophia and Rebecca sat on one side, their faces cold. James and Thomas, Rebecca's husband, sat with arms crossed, not even saying hello when Emily and I walked in. Mom spoke first, trying to keep her voice calm. "There've been some things lately that cause tension. We need to talk it out. No yelling, no blaming, just the truth." I nodded, then said it straight. No sugarcoating. "I know both of you have been renting out the Snowdonia house for profit. I have solid proof, and from today on, no one is allowed to use it without my permission." Rebecca shot up from her seat. "I didn't make any money off of it. I just let a few friends borrow it. How dare you?" "Enough." Sophia cut her off, but she didn't look at me. She turned to my mom instead. "Fine, I admit it. I did list the house on Airbnb a few times, but only to help pay for the kids' tuition. That house is under Mom and Dad's name. It's not Michael's personal property." I looked her right in the eye. "You know I've been the one paying the loan, the taxes, and all the maintenance. Mom and Dad only hold the title to avoid complications. But if you want to talk about ownership, I have every document needed to transfer it into my name anytime I want." The air froze. James mumbled, "Oh, so you bought a house just to show off? Isn't that a bit much?" I didn't bother replying. My dad, who had been silent the whole time, finally spoke. "Everyone quiet." He rarely raised his voice, so when he did, everyone listened. "That house was bought by Michael. Your mother and I only held the name to keep things simple. From now on, no one goes up there unless he says so." Silence. Then Sophia sighed, like something finally clicked. "All right. If you don't want to share, at least help us with one thing. Tuition has been a real burden. You're living comfortably, no kids. You should... Should I be paying for your kids' tuition?" I cut in, my voice low and cold. "You're saying I should fund someone else's life choices because I don't have children? Because I live frugally and work hard?" Rebecca jumped in. "We're not asking for everything. Just a bit. It's for the family. That's all." I let out a short, sharp laugh, like a blade. "Family isn't an excuse to take advantage. I don't owe anyone in this room a thing." Then Emily gently placed her hand on my back, signaling it was time to leave. As I turned to go, I heard my mother call out, her voice tight with emotion. "Michael?" I stopped just long enough to say without turning around. "I love you, Mom, but I'm done playing the fool." And I walked out of that house. And out of the role of the nice little brother they had always cast me in. But I knew this wasn't over, because people who survive by feeding off others' kindness never let go that easily. About 3 weeks after the family meeting, I finally started to feel some peace. No more long guilt-tripping texts. No more late-night crying calls from my mom. I thought the storm had passed, but I was too naive. That Friday, Emily and I were having dinner at a friend's place when I got a message from Alex, the property manager I hired to oversee the Snowdonia house. The message read only 3 words. "They got in." Before I could reply, he called. His voice was rushed, urgent. "I just got a motion alert from the gate camera. 2 men used bolt cutters to break the chain lock. The gate's damaged badly. I've called the police. They're on their way." I stood frozen in the kitchen, ears ringing as he continued. "They came in through the back door, broke the lock." I saw their faces on camera. It was James and Thomas. Emily walked over, saw how pale I was, and took the phone from my hand to speak to Alex. I was trembling, not from fear, but from rage so intense I could hardly breathe. We left the dinner party immediately. In the car, Emily held my hand, but I didn't say a word the whole ride home. My chest was a storm of emotions: anger, disappointment, bitterness. I had tried to keep my distance, tried to remove myself from their mess, yet they dragged me right back in. The next day, I got a call from the Gwinnett County Sheriff's Office. James and Thomas had been caught red-handed attempting to disable the living room camera system. They were charged with 3 counts: unlawful entry, property damage, and criminal intimidation. According to the police, both men claimed they were just retrieving family belongings. I requested access to the footage and a full incident report. Alex sent me the video showing James cutting through the metal chain, then he and Thomas forcing open the back door so hard the hinges snapped. In the footage, Thomas even looked straight at the camera and flipped it off, as if daring me. There was no doubt left. This wasn't impulsive. They came with tools, a plan, and the intent to trespass, and I wasn't staying quiet anymore. That afternoon, my mother called. "Michael, I heard what happened. The boys got carried away, but they didn't mean any harm. They think you're being too harsh." I froze at those words. "Too harsh?" I repeated, each syllable cutting into my chest. "You know they broke into my house, damaged the gate, busted the back door, and tried to disable my security system." "I know, Her voice trembled. "I just want you to reconsider. If you drop the charges, it won't go to court. They have jobs, honey. Thomas works in security. If he gets a record, he could lose it." I gripped the phone tighter. Emily was in the room, watching me with worried eyes. "Mom," I said, trying to stay calm. "They crossed every line. This isn't just about resentment or jealousy. They illegally entered my property. They caused damage. And they did it with full awareness. You want me to pretend it didn't happen?" She went silent. "I've put up with them my whole life," I continued, my voice dropping. "But not anymore. This is the line. And if you choose to stand with them, I can't keep this relationship." I ended the call. That night, I wrote to my attorney, asking her to represent me in all further communication with law enforcement and the DA's office. I also requested a restraining order preventing James and Thomas from coming near me or any of my property in any form. I didn't know how far the case would go. But one thing I knew for sure: I wasn't backing down. I was no longer the patient Michael, the soft-spoken Michael, the one who endured to keep the peace. They broke the lock, literally and figuratively, and unleashed a completely different version of me. And this version wasn't going to be intimidated. After the break-in, something inside me collapsed. It wasn't the physical damage. I could fix a gate, replace locks, even install an entirely new security system. What was broken the most was trust. It wasn't the first time my family hurt me, but this time, something snapped. Emily couldn't hide her exhaustion anymore. That night, she sat beside me as I reviewed the police reports and the lawsuit draft. The living room light reflected off her glasses, and her voice was slow but edged with bitterness. "Michael, I know you love your parents, but this has gone way too far. If you want to cut ties completely, I'll support you. I honestly don't want to see you dragged through this anymore." I didn't answer right away, but I knew she was right. She no longer smiled when I told little stories about my sisters. She no longer suggested, "Maybe give them another chance." She'd stayed quiet long enough, and now it was time for her to walk away from something she never chose to be a part of, and I didn't want her to keep carrying this burden with me. The next day, I called Alex. He had previously just helped with regular maintenance, But now I signed a full-service contract with him, installing a new camera system, smart locks, anti-climb fencing, and 24/7 monitored security updates. Alex is cautious by nature, a former security officer living with his elderly mother nearby. I trusted him completely. "I'll treat this place like my own," he told me on the phone, "and I'll make sure no one steps in here without permission." Since then, I haven't been back to Snowdonia. I just receive routine reports and photo updates from the cameras. The mountains are still beautiful, the forest still quiet, but I no longer feel at peace thinking about that house. It used to be my retreat, the place that reminded me who I was. Now, when I close my eyes, I hear the sound of bolt cutters slicing metal, the crash of the back door being forced open, and see the angry faces of two men who once called me their brother-in-law. My sisters, if I can still call them that, didn't stop. Even though I blocked their numbers, emails, and social media, they found ways to reach me through new addresses, fake accounts, even handwritten letters sent to my attorney's office. The last one arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, written in Rebecca's neat handwriting. She begged me to reconsider my harsh decision, claiming James and Thomas had only acted out of emotion. The final lines made my skin crawl. "If you can't help with the kids' tuition, at least don't destroy their future." I folded the letter, shoved it in a drawer, and locked it. That night, I sat alone in my office, staring at the real estate listing screen. I typed, "Mountain retreat for sale in Snowdonia, 3 bedrooms, mountain view, price negotiable." My fingers paused at the last word. Emily stood behind me, gently placing her hand on my shoulder. "Are you sure?" she asked. I looked up at her and nodded. That place isn't a sanctuary anymore. It's become a symbol of betrayal. I don't want to live in a house where every door reminds me of injustice. No one can feel safe in a place that's been violated, and more than ever, I need safety. But I also know selling the house isn't about money. It's about reclaiming control, letting them know that if they thought they could take anything through pressure, tears, or hollow promises, they picked the wrong person. I'm ending this game on my terms, and once I've cleared every trace of the past from that house, there'll be nothing left tying me down. Blood, family, none of that gives anyone the right to destroy someone else's life. I'm learning to clean house, not just the property, but all the toxic ties that should have been cut long ago. One Monday morning, while I was in a legal meeting at the office, the receptionist informed me that a courier envelope had arrived with my name on it. When I opened it, I found a short, handwritten note and a bank check for £5,000. At the bottom were 2 signatures, James and Thomas. The letter was brief. They admitted to the trespassing, apologized for their impulsive actions, and asked me to drop the charges so their jobs and family lives wouldn't be impacted. They promised never to return to the cabin and said they were willing to sign any agreement if I would consider ending the case. I sat still at my desk, holding the check for a long moment. £5,000 wouldn't undo what they did, but it seemed like the first time they were taking some accountability, at least on paper. That evening, I brought the letter to my attorney, Charlotte Green, a sharp and practical woman. After reading it, she sat quietly for a moment, then looked at me over her thin-rimmed glasses. "Michael, if you want to pursue this in court, I'll support you. But consider this. Litigation will take a year, drain your energy and finances, and you might walk away with nothing more than exhaustion." I said nothing, then nodded slightly. I was tired. Tired of the drama and the endless intrusion. I needed closure, but in a way that made it clear this was their final chance. 3 days later, Charlotte drafted a civil settlement agreement. The terms were clear. James and Thomas would pay for all repair costs. Add 2,500 pounds for emotional distress and wasted time. Cover my full legal fees and sign a binding agreement prohibiting any direct or indirect contact with me or Emily. If they violated it, the agreement would be void, and I could reopen the criminal case. We don't need heartfelt apologies, Charlotte said bluntly. We need them to fear legal consequences. That weekend, the two brothers-in-law came to Charlotte's office with their own attorney. I wasn't there, but Charlotte later told me the atmosphere was tense. Thomas remained silent the entire time, simply signing without a word. James initially tried to negotiate the 2,500 pounds down, but Charlotte cut him off. You're free to choose another route. Go to court. Let us present every piece of evidence. Unauthorized rentals, threatening texts, and that lovely clip of you flipping off the security camera. James fell silent. In the end, they signed. A copy of the agreement was sent to me, along with 2 additional checks, one for 2,500 pounds, as agreed, and another for 3,200 pounds to cover attorney and legal fees. I didn't feel happy or relieved, but I felt something else. Clearer, firmer. I had taken back control. Not through yelling, not through conflict, through the law. That evening, Emily opened a bottle of wine we'd been saving. We're done, she said, raising her glass to mine. I looked at her and smiled, for the first time in weeks, without the weight of anger or regret in my chest. Not quite, I replied slowly. But this ends one chapter, and it's the first page of a life without them in it. I knew I'd never be close to my sisters again. And that wasn't a tragedy. It was freedom. A month after the settlement was finalized, I received a small package at my doorstep. No return address, just familiar handwriting. Michael, read if you want to. I knew it was from Rebecca. I brought it inside, placed it on the table, and left it untouched for 3 days. Part of me wanted to believe they'd finally understood that everything I'd done wasn't to punish, but to protect myself. But another part, the more guarded and hardened part, stopped me from opening it. Eventually, on a quiet Sunday evening, I made myself a cup of tea and opened the envelope. Inside was a long letter. No excuses, no blame, just acknowledgement that they'd always seen me as different, as not quite family, because I chose a different path. Rebecca wrote about pressure, expectations, and how she let envy override her sense of dignity. You've always reminded me of what I never had the courage to choose, a life I made for myself. I read it all, gently folded it, and placed it in the nightstand drawer. I didn't tear it up, but I didn't respond either. I respected the honesty in her words, but my decision remained the same. No contact. Forgiveness doesn't have to mean reconciliation. Since the settlement, Emily and I began spending more time on what truly mattered. We took a road trip to Barcelona, driving along empty mountain highways with no cell signal, no unwanted calls, no echoes from the past creeping in. I started writing again, something I'd long abandoned. Short stories, notes in my old leather journal, even articles on topics like how to rebuild boundaries with family. Maybe one day I'll share them. I still keep the cabin in Snowdonia, though I don't visit much. Alex continues to manage it, sending weekly photos, sometimes snow blanketing the entrance, sometimes the sunset casting red light across the trees. The house is no longer something that was taken from me. It's back to what it was meant to be, a place to breathe. My mother still calls, not often, but enough to show she's trying to hold on to something. We talk about small things, the backyard garden, a new almond cake recipe she's trying, or a workout routine my dad is into. She never mentions Sophia, Rebecca, or what happened. I get it, and I respect that. There was one time she said, "You sound peaceful. I can hear it in your voice." I smiled. I had to learn from scratch, Mom, but this time I don't feel guilty for choosing myself. That was the biggest lesson I took from all of it. In families, love is sometimes used as an excuse to control, to intrude, to demand sacrifice. But real love doesn't come from blood. It comes from respect. I don't need a loud family to feel like I belong. I just need someone who listens when I speak. A space where I can be myself, and peace that isn't disturbed by warped expectations. I'm still the youngest in the family. That hasn't changed. But now, I no longer bow down just to keep everyone else happy. Michael's story is a reminder that sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the ones closest to us. But instead of enduring it, he chose to stand up, protect his boundaries, and reclaim his dignity. In a world where kindness is often exploited, saying no isn't selfish, it's strength. Michael not only reclaimed peace for himself, but he also became a voice for anyone trapped in a toxic family cycle, showing that you have the right to choose the life you deserve. What do you think about Michael's decision? Was he too harsh, or was it exactly what he needed to protect himself? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful stories about family and finding peace.